Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tim Grattan podcast right here on my YouTube page. And for my first ever video podcast, since I haven't done one of these in, gosh, probably 3, 4 years since I did a wrestling podcast with my buddy Steve back home in Ohio, I decided to spice it up a little bit. Because usually when everyone does, like, they do an intro podcast, they say, "Hi, I'm so and so. I've done blah, 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 and X, blah, blah, blah years." I decided to say, you know what? Let's do something different because I like being different in ways of like, if I was a reporter or, an anchor, I would do this instead of this. So this week, I reached out to one of my favorite college football writers, Pat Forde from Sports Illustrated. Not gonna lie, very nervous talking to Pat because to me, he's one of the goats of college athletics in terms of like coverage, not just on a print side, digital side, but also too in the podcasting world because his show with Dan Wetzel and Ross Dillinger, the College Football Inquirer, is one of the best college football shows and college basketball too, because they do talk college basketball once football season is over with. It's one of the best shows out there. And Pat to me is he's been in the game for a long time. And with SEC Media Days coming up here this Monday in Dallas, Texas, I decided to say, "Hey, Pat, want to talk some SEC ball?" And he replied back to me. He said, "Yeah, let's do it." So check it out. Pat and I would go about 20 minutes talking about, what's going to happen at SEC Media Days, get his take on Alabama football. Is Auburn looking to make a bounce back in year two, and so much more. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this interview with Pat Forde and myself, and I will catch you guys on the other side. Pat, thank you for taking time today and joining me. Talk a little SEC football with the media days coming up this Monday. What are some storylines that you're looking out for as the SEC goes from 14 to 16 teams now with Texas and Oklahoma in the league. Plus, Nick Saban's no longer the king of the castle as the head coach of Alabama. So, like, what are some storylines that you're looking forward to for SEC Media Days coming up here in Dallas?
Yeah, well, you definitely nailed the two big ones right there. Texas and Oklahoma arriving. It seems like it was forever ago when it was decided they would be part of the league, and now it's finally going to be here. And I think Texas comes in as an immediate title contender, and I think Oklahoma probably not too far behind. Should probably be a top 15 sort of team. We'll see how they handle the week in, week out rigors of the league. It's going to be harder than what they're accustomed to with um, the Big 12 for sure. Some great matchups for both teams. Really looking forward to seeing them play some of these schools, some of whom they've played in the past, and some brand new matchups. So that's going to be great. And then, yeah, we're replacing the greatest coach in the history of college football in Nick Saban. And everybody was pretty sure he was near the end, but it still kind of came as a surprise. And Kalen DeBoer comes in, and while I think Kalen DeBoer is an excellent hire, and I think he'll do well, it's a brand new dynamic there. It's somebody who's got no history in the South or in the SEC, and he's going to have to do a little bit of proving to the Alabama faithful that he's the man who can go step into the shoes of Bear Bryant and Nick Saban.
And I was gonna say, with Kalen DeBoer, taking over here in Tuscaloosa, what are your expectations for DeBoer under his first season, here at Alabama and taking on a way tougher schedule in the SEC than he did in the Pac-12 last year with Washington?
Yeah, I mean, it's you know what, he takes over a good team, that's for sure. I mean, the cupboard was far from bare. It never is at Alabama. And you've got an experienced returning quarterback in Jalen Milroe. You did have some big losses, I thought, in the portal. Certainly Caleb Downs leaving was a blow. Isaiah Bond at receiver as well, and some others. But I still think that they're well positioned to be, at the top of the SEC. I think if you're looking at it, it's Georgia, it's Texas, then it's Alabama, and then maybe after that we're looking at Mississippi, Missouri in there. So with a 12-team playoff, the great news is DeBoer doesn't have to step in and go 12-0 right away. You could go 10-2 in the SEC. You're probably going to make that playoff.
And on the other side of the state here, you had the Auburn Tigers, down on the plains. With Hugh Freeze coming back for his second year, they had some changes this offseason as well. They have a new offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, but I feel like there's a little bit of pressure for Hugh Freeze because let's just face it, Auburn is, they're a wild card because if they don't like something, they know they will get rid of it some way. Just ask Brian Harsin that one. But what are your expectations with Auburn under year two with Hugh Freeze?
Yeah, I mean that you're right there that Auburn, the expectations are always there. And especially as long as Alabama's doing well, it just adds that much more pressure for Auburn to do well. And one of the reasons they've been so successful over the long haul is the fact that they refuse to just sit back and say, Alabama and other schools are better than us. They don't see it that way. So there is expectation for Hugh Freeze. The first year was not great. I didn't think it was going to be great, and it wasn't. But the offense particularly was disappointing. And they're going to roll back, it looks like, with Peyton Thorne at quarterback. We'll see if he, retains the job all the way through, but he needs to play better. They need to protect him better. He needs some receivers to make more plays around him. But they've got a long way to go, and it's just such that it's always been a tough league, but now it's that much tougher. So getting back up the ladder is not easily done, and we'll see what Hugh comes up with. He's a proven winner, and I expect them to be better this year, but how much better, I don't know.
Auburn to me is very interesting because like Pat, I'm originally from Ohio. So I don't know before I came here, like I didn't really know much about the South and how like college football works around here. To me, like, why is Auburn such like a unique job in a way? Not just because like, I get it. You have two big giants of football programs right next to each other in Georgia and in Alabama, but like, why does Auburn to me feel like it could be a good job, but it can also be like a very tough job at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, both, because they are, first of all, they're totally invested. They're all in on being good at football, and they will do whatever it takes to be good at football. But on the other side of it, yes, Alabama is to the northwest, Georgia is to the northeast, Florida State is not far away. Everybody recruits in that area in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Panhandle. So you've got to be on top of your game at all times there. I mean, if you go to a game at Auburn, it's an unbelievable scene. The fans are totally into it. It's a great stadium. So they find ways. They have always found ways to be good, but it is not easy. It's not one of those things where you dominate your state or dominate your region in any way. So the pressure is always there, and they kind of stuck their necks out a little bit reputationally, hiring Hugh Freeze, and they need Freeze to come through for them.
Do you think Hugh Freeze is the right guy that can lead Auburn back to, national championship contenders where, they won a national title with Cam Newton and then they went back in 2013 with Gus Malzahn as the head coach?
Yeah, and you know what, yes, I think it's a job for Hugh Freeze. I do, and he was very successful battling Alabama when he was at Ole Miss. He's a very good offensive coach. He's an unbelievable recruiter. I think those things are all important there. And, his track record says he should be the hire there. Now, there was a lot of baggage that came with Hugh. And he's got to be able to shrug that off and show he can be good enough on the field to make people forget everything that happened off the field. But, I think he's moved far enough past that he's kind of in a new chapter for himself now. And I think that he's one of the best guys I've seen at putting together an offensive game plan, at calling plays, at scheming things up and getting the right players to do it. So I give him a chance there for sure.
I will say the Iron Bowl, I think this year will be interesting because maybe because I am a gambler in a way, and I think Auburn might have a shot to beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa because Hugh Freeze has done it before. But it seems like that game, no matter what Auburn or Alabama's record, you can always throw it out the window. And in your opinion, do you think this year's Iron Bowl has a chance to live up to expectations than in the past?
Sure. I mean, like you said, I mean, you look at the last two games they played at Auburn. which Alabama won both of them, and I have no idea how. Either one. Bryce Young led the long comeback drive in 2021, and then last year, Jalen Milroe to Isaiah Bond, 4th and 31. When all hope appeared to be lost there. So, those were not great Auburn teams, and they darn near beat Alabama. So it's harder, obviously, in Tuscaloosa, but they always have a way of rising to that occasion because I think that game means that much to everybody at Auburn.
Since I've been in Alabama, and my first Iron Bowl actually since I moved here was the overtime game back in 2000. What was that 20? That was 21, right? Yeah,
Yep.
2021. I will say that game to me has a lot more investment because me growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, yeah, Ohio State, Michigan was a big deal, but it wasn't as big as like the Iron Bowl. So to me, like the Iron Bowl is a tad bit bigger, especially like in state game than Ohio State, Michigan in some ways. Cause like, yeah, Columbus and Cleveland, they're 2 hours apart from each other. So it's not like, it's something to throw on, the TV for a lot of people on the last Saturday of the regular season. But like in this, to me, true college football fans here in Alabama, no matter what they're doing that day, if that game's in the mid-afternoon or night, they will be turning on their TVs and they will definitely be checking out the Iron Bowl for sure. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Alabama's not a professional sports state either. In Ohio and in Michigan, you've got a lot of professional teams, and you don't have that in Alabama. Those are the pro teams, basically, Auburn and Alabama. And it is, you know, you're side by side with fans from the other side a lot. And so I think it just matters immensely every single day of the year, that rivalry.
oh, for sure. And speaking of rivalry, well, a new rivalry that's coming to the SEC, and that's Texas and Oklahoma bringing the Red River rivalry into the league. What are your expectations on both teams heading into this fall? Because I do agree with you that Texas has a shot to win it this year. But for Oklahoma, I feel like they might finish towards the middle of the pack this season. What about you? What are your expectations on the Longhorns and Sooners this fall?
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma could finish towards the middle of the pack and still be a top 15 or 20 team. I mean, depending on how people actually rate them, if they rate by wins and losses the way they often do, then no. But strength of schedule could be a differentiator there. I mean, I named off 5 SEC schools that I think could be in the top 10, and then I do think LSU is not far behind that, and then maybe Oklahoma isn't far behind that too. Maybe Tennessee. We'll see. So Oklahoma, they need Jackson Arnold to come through at quarterback. They've had a legacy of great quarterbacks, but they need a difference maker there. They have gotten better defensively year 1 to year 2 with Brent Venables. That should continue. He's a defensive coach. They've got to perform and execute well on game days. Sometimes that's an issue. They certainly did when they won the Red River rivalry last year against Texas in a dramatic fashion. But there are some games they've let get away in kind of a surprising fashion. Under Venables so far in years 1 and 2. So he's got to show a little bit more there. Personnel wise, I think they'll match up relatively well. We'll see. Well, I don't think they're quite as far along as Texas, especially up front. Texas has become a big physical team like you need to be in the SEC. And the Longhorns also, they have killed the transfer portal. So they've got most of the pieces you need. And I do think for Steve Sarkisian, it was a big breakthrough getting them to the playoff last year and kind of gets a little bit of the pressure off his back and shows, okay, I can do it here. Just follow my lead.
Is this another year for the SEC? Is it Georgia and the field, or do you think someone else, maybe a team that like not that many people are looking at, saying that, what, this team might shock people and this team has a chance to play in Atlanta for the SEC championship game?
Yeah, I don't think it's Georgia like miles ahead of everyone else. I mean, the program's, on an operating on an unbelievably high level because Kirby Smart recruits so well and develops and has, ways to scheme people up too. But, you know, I don't think that they're the program hit a very high point in 2021 and 2022, obviously winning back-to-back national championships and doing it in pretty dominant fashion. Last year, there were a few games where they were kind of scuffling around, and I think they showed they weren't quite at that same level, and it caught up with them when they played Alabama in the SEC title game. It does help. You've got Carson Beck back as the starter for a second year there. Got a lot of other really good players. Their defense should be excellent again, but they've got off-field issues. They've had the driving situations that just keep popping up, and you wonder about the overall focus of the program a little bit in that way. And then, yeah, there are other contenders in addition to Texas and Alabama. I do think Ole Miss has its best team under Lane Kiffin, and Missouri might have its best team in 15 years, so this is there are contenders out there. Missouri also has a much more user-friendly schedule than any of the other contenders too. So I think it's going to be yet another very interesting, exciting season in the league, and I think maybe a little less predictable than some we've seen recently.
So for sure, I think the SEC, I mean, it's going to be a fun season, with the two new schools coming in. And I think what's a good thing for the SEC is they finally drop divisions with now, like, you have Bama playing Georgia in a regular season, the first time since, what I believe the COVID year was in 2020 was the last time
Yeah.
they played in
Yep.
regular season. So
Mhm.
like I feel like there's a lot of interesting storylines coming into the SEC, especially for this fall. But you also look out, stuff that's not happening on the field is what I want to transition to really quick is what is going to happen with Florida State and Clemson? Is this lawsuit actually going to like stretch it out so far where it's like, yeah, you guys can leave, but to me, the SEC is not really interested in both those schools because they're in the same state as other SEC teams. And to me, like they don't really bring like a big enough footprint for the SEC to have eyeballs on in terms of like if the SEC wants to expand and go to 20 teams. What do you eventually think is going to happen with Florida State and Clemson? Are they going to, go to the Big Ten or, Brett Yormark at Big 12 Media Days was like, sure, I'll kick the tires on these two schools. Why not?
Yeah, I wish I knew what the master plan was for those schools because I don't see it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I have my doubts. I think the SEC is for now the least viable spot for them. Maybe the Big Ten is a better spot, but I'm not sure the Big Ten, gains anything truly like huge by adding Florida State and Clemson because it's all about TV eyeballs and TV footprints and that sort of thing. And while both those schools have big fan bases, I'm not sure they're the kind of thing that would change things enough that you're going to bring in dramatically more money. You just signed a fairly long contract for the Big Ten last year. Are they gonna break that? Is Fox gonna be willing to break it and say, here's more money for Florida State and Clemson? I don't see it for sure. Big 12 is a lateral move. I think that would be a grave mistake to throw away all of the regionality and the tradition that they've had, especially Clemson in the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic, to go join in with Arizona and Iowa State and Kansas. Like it just doesn't seem like a value play to me. So, I think that maybe their goal is simply the ACC will break up when we leave. And then when that happens, we will have options, that North Carolina is going to be in play and Virginia is going to be in play. And then, when the ACC or the SEC and the Big Ten really get to fighting over those ACC teams, that they'll be more highly sought after. And maybe that would kind of veto the reservations that Florida and South Carolina would have about having those in-state rivals in the league with them. So I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know how it's going to work out. It's going to be expensive, and I think it's going to take a long time to get where they want to go if we ever get there.
That was Pat Forde from Sports Illustrated and the College Football Inquirer podcast joining me here on this Friday. And not gonna lie, very nervous doing that interview because, like I said earlier, Pat was, he's one of my favorite college football reporters out there, and I wanted to sound like I knew I was talking about. So, like in the beginning, you're probably like, "Wow, Tim sounds a little bit nervous there." But once we started talking, I felt like Pat was phenomenal. Great insight, great details, on his thoughts on what's going to happen at SEC media days, Bama football, all that fun stuff. But definitely, definitely was a little bit nervous out of the block, but I think I warmed up too once we got, towards the end. And because I was also a nervous boy, I forgot to say goodbye to him while we were actually recording the interview. So we're doing it now. Pat, thank you very much, and can't wait to talk to you uh, soon once we start with the college football season. So, as always, friends, reviews, likes, comments in the comments section below. Let me know what you think. Like I said, I'm new to this whole video podcasting game. I want to get better. I want to learn how to do this. And maybe, hey, this could actually be my full-time job as a YouTube creator. Even though, yeah, I do work in local television right now, but as they say in the pro wrestling business, the card is subject to change. So appreciate you guys enjoying this episode. Hope to talk to you guys next week. We'll do a full recap on what actually took place at SEC Media Days and, see what else is happening in the world of sports because, not going to lie, really excited for the Major League Baseball All-Star game too because I think Major League Baseball got it right for starting Paul Skeens from Pittsburgh as the new face of baseball. If you haven't watched Skeens pitch for the Pirates, go out of your way and watch this kid pitch. I think he's going to be one of the best young arms, not just right now, but in many years to come in the game of Major League Baseball. But that's all the time we have today. I will talk to you guys next week. Full SEC recap, Major League Baseball All-Star Game review, and so much more right here on the Tim Grattan podcast. Thank you, everyone, and have a great weekend. Talk to y'all later. See ya.